Yeah. Wow, we're live, Beena. We're live.
Yes. Hello.
Go ahead.
Hello, Syl, and hello, Graham, and hello, everyone there on Facebook. Hopefully, Norma, Ramsey, and sure, I've been missing you. We were missing live, doing live, but it was, of course, all because of appropriateness. And yesterday, it was appropriate to not do this. Anyway, we are here, and we are going to do the most exciting practice I can say for myself, doing the
Mm,
capital R reading
mm,
of anything. It will, of course, it is not limited to only the Nobelia story, but whenever we do practice capital R reading, it is fun because not only that we sharpen our skills of extracting moreness, but we also practice to unhook from ideas and perspectives, pre-existing ideas and perspectives. We do that, we go in deep into any story, any perspective with with freedom. Like, okay, yes, not any shoulds here. Whatever that person or that story or perspective is sharing with us, we are going to be receptive. First, receive, dissect later. And this is what we are doing. We did the story, and then, of course, when we do the capital R reading, the first step is to be receptive. Hearing that, capital H hearing, capital L listening, capital S seeing, capital O observing, whatever has been shared, that it all makes sense. When we choose this intent that whatever is going to be shared with us, it does make sense. Then we will do the, of course, the reverse engineering, how it makes sense now, from which perspective it makes sense, in which context it makes sense. Then all these things come together. And then it's not anymore what has been shared with us from other person or any other reality or perspective,
mm.
but what we have acquired. Then it becomes ours. This is my thing now. What I am getting, what I am extracting, what I am receiving, and how I am receiving. It all becomes mine, my choice, my deliberately chosen one. And that is a fun. That is a real fun. Still, we were missing this, and now I hope that you have already done all your things which are
Not
needed
yet,
to be
not yet,
done.
not yet, not yet. I'm
Not
almost
yet.
there. I'm
Wow,
almost
wow,
there.
it is taking
No, no.
time.
Well, because I just
No problem.
happened
No
to
problem.
get a message right as we started, as you
Mhm.
know, as I came to do the sharing. There was a message, and that I had to take
Yes.
care of real quick. So I took care of it. I thought, don't
Okay.
take
Okay.
me
No
long.
problem. No problem.
Beena,
No problem.
before we get started, share
Yes.
about the conundrum of freedom. Yeah? It's a
It's
powerful
wow.
point
This is
that
actually the
requires lots of
words.
thinking.
This is
And
the
let me put a qualifier here. I shared
yes.
something with Beena, and it's a big deal. And now Beena is going to share not a conclusion or a takeaway, or it's a little bit of a repeat back. But what she's sharing is she's in process of working through it. So this sharing to me
Exactly.
is valuable to hear somebody in process of working through it, right? And of course, now it's a repeat back and
Yes.
and a takeaway all combined, which means that she is also at the same time going to be figuring it out, working through it. So we'll hear this entire process from her, which is very, very wonderful and it's very powerful. So it's an opportunity for her to practice and hear her own thoughts from herself. And that's a massively valuable mechanism, right? So it's a fantastic opportunity to share this. So let's hear, please, Beena.
Okay. Okay. I hope
By the
that
way, sorry,
yes.
just to good to hear you, Beena, says Norma. And I just want to say hello, hello, hello to
Mhm.
Norma. Hello, 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 Norma. Before we get into
Yes.
this,
Hello,
right? Yeah.
Norma. Yeah. Is
Yeah.
this all what you were saying? Okay.
No, I wanted to say
So
though,
yes,
because on the Fridays we've been going through the poem because that poem is so much, and we may get back to it a little later on. This question about freedom is deep in that poem. It's one of the reasons that came up in my mind, Beena. Right? So it is
okay.
connected to what we've been going through, and of course, it's connected to the entire Biella series and Ursula's choice, right? So it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Yeah, yeah. Lots to it.
Mhm.
All right, please go ahead.
Okay.
What is the topic of your communication here?
Conundrums of freedom.
Yeah, or the conundrum of freedom. Yes, yes. Yeah, yeah.
This is what Syl just shared with me. I guess it was day before yesterday,
Sorry,
and then
pause
he
one
says
second
that,
again.
and
Sorry, before you get started again, I just want to say hi to Sarah. Sarah's here too. Brilliant. Hello, Sarah. Hello, hello, hello. Wonderful. I'm glad you're here, Sarah. Absolutely wonderful. Sorry, but I keep interrupting you, but I do want to say hello because what you've got to share is substantial, and I don't want to interrupt you halfway through. So, all right, start again, please. Sorry. The conundrum of freedom. Yeah, go ahead.
yes, this is what Syl shared with me day before yesterday, and it was like, okay, I just remind me of share this conundrum of freedom. And
Mm.
I was thinking about this, but of course, because I was too busy and too occupied with other things, so it was just in the back of my mind that yes, it is something, yes. And it was very interesting because these two words I can say that never heard before together,
Mm.
of course,
Mm.
not independently, yes, but together, like conundrum of freedom. I never heard this before. It is like now I can say that it is like an awareness has its own chaos.
Yes.
We don't actually think or read like awareness and chaos together, but this is what it is. And when Syl shared that, it was like, okay, yes, he's going to share in detail. I never actually think about it by myself before Syl shared that with detail about this. And then yesterday he was sharing, and I was just listening. He even says that because for me, I don't want to. Sometimes it gets too much if you start communicating immediately. You lose that. Sometimes you need to allow that thing, that perspective, that awareness to just settle in as it is, without any changes, without anything. Sometimes, of course, mostly we need to ask questions immediately, that okay, yes, because I'm not getting it. But that time I just choose to not ask a question, not make any comment, and just let it sink in, because for me it was so good and it was so huge. And yes, I I had a lot of questions, but I said no, just let it sink in, let it settle in, and then maybe it will come up without any question, who knows. And when Sil shared about that freedom has its own conundrum, that you cannot enjoy freedom in true real essence, like
Absolute
absolute
freedom.
freedom.
Mm. Go ahead, go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, without when you are living, when you are living with other people, when you are interacting, when you are communicating, when you are sharing with other people, one
Wow, wow.
cannot enjoy
Because there
the
are certain
freedom in the
obligations,
absolute sense.
right?
Of course.
Mm.
And
Mm.
that was like, wow, okay, how? And then this, because we do talk about freedom of being, big many times, like okay, it's a continuous thing, and of course it is not limited to way of impeccability. Almost every other person they do talk about, and everybody is like thinking about it, like yes, I need that freedom of being, and I want to acquire this. But when still shared about that, one cannot enjoy the absolute, uh, the cannot enjoy the freedom in absolute sense, in true essence, when we are interacting, when we are sharing, when we
Yeah.
are having shared things with other people. And
Yeah.
that was like, what,
Yeah. It's a big
what,
point.
and what a thought. And it is not just a thought, it's getting like more into, because it is making connections now. How
Yeah.
I cannot enjoy my freedom. Because if
Yeah.
I want to do something, every act, every intent, every gesture has some consequences. And those
Exactly.
consequences, of course, going to affect not only me, but me just being me also going to
Yeah.
others.
Yeah.
And that was like, wow, the idea of freedom.
Yeah.
But the more Syl describe and explain the conundrum of freedom, the more I got convinced with, of course, without him saying anything about appropriateness at that time, I got more convinced that the appropriateness is the real magic, is the real
Exactly.
essence behind the human life
Exactly.
also. Because it's all about appropriateness. We cannot
Yeah.
enjoy
Yeah.
true essence, the real essence of freedom in absolute sense, if until we are living in this world. We
Yeah.
cannot have
Yeah.
this. Otherwise, the consequence of, or if we choose to enjoy and we want to have the absolute freedom, then we have to choose to be alone. And that was the big blow. Like, yes, sometimes our intents, the way they are manifesting or materializing in our life, we don't know actually what we are intending for. We all was say that, okay, yes, oh, this is something I want. I'm the one who was, of course, inspired by this idea. And it was, of course, not uh, deliberately choosing to be alone or something. No, but
Yeah.
because I never think it through to the end. The
Exactly.
idea of freedom,
Exactly.
what freedom actually means, what are the
Yeah.
consequences, because I
And the
never did that,
implications.
because I never
Yeah.
exercised thinking it through the end. Exactly, the implications. And also there was a should in my life, because I assume that because it's freedom, then it is going to be all wonderful.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was the should, of course, not obviously, but it was unobvious should there, and I accepted this. And then that, of course, a lot of realization kicks in that, okay, oh, even the most profound idea, we need to practice thinking it through to the end, at least when our
Exactly.
conscience, till our conscience get clear. And I never
Exactly.
did that on the concept of freedom. So when still I start sharing those ideas about those perspectives, and then of course details, it was a big blow for me. Like, first, I
Yeah.
had shoulds.
Yeah.
Second, that I didn't practice the thinking it through to the end. And the third, how this inadvertent intent was affecting and, of course, materializing things in my life.
Yeah. That's the key here. The
Yes.
inadvertent intent. That's why clarity of intent is so critical. Module 1, Session 1, Way of Impeccability. Clarity of intent, focus of purpose. Because we can have these unintended consequences. Yes, we intend absolute freedom, total freedom, complete freedom. Oh, yeah, but that means I can't really interact with people because, well, there's certain obligations that go with acting people. I'm not free to exact, like I was saying earlier, to use a horrible example, I'm not like free to spit on you. Not that I would want to, but I'm still not free to do it. There's a limit, and there's other things too. Just it's
Yes.
a simple example. More subtle, obviously too. So there's conditions that go with friendship, yes, and those conditions they limit your freedom. Yeah. And if you say, I want absolute freedom, well, no friends for you. As simple as that. Same with decision making. You're going to have complete freedom making. You're going to be without the connection to the universe from an attunement point of view, which is massively, incredibly fantastic for decision making. I personally refuse to make any decisions that are especially major ones without attunement being involved. Because how do I know my decisions are right? I've got limited information. So if you have absolute freedom, well, unless you have access to absolute information, all right, then maybe, yes, then you're going to be the universe. All right, maybe. But in a technical sense, you may find yourself having that freedom to make decisions completely, again, on your own. See, no influence. Any influence is curtailing and limiting potentially your freedom. Right? Now, it all depends on how you conceive of this, but we have to be careful of those unintended consequences because of incomplete conception. Yeah. Why,
Yes.
why thinking it through to the end and conceptualizing, not just defining, because a conception is connected. It's connected. See, like in this case, this conception of freedom,
Yes.
it's connected to decision making, it's connected to friendship, it's connected to obligations and expectations and everything. Now, of course, to me, number one rule of relationships is no expectations, no obligations. However, this is an idea that's not practically attainable. Yes, we have some expectations, but the idea there is to say, let's take it at the extreme, because that will help us to minimize those as much as possible. Yes. And then if you have the absolute minimum expectations and obligations, you have a fantastic friendship. I mean, look at our friendship, Beena. Do we have any expectations or obligations? We interact regularly.
Obligations,
Yeah.
obligations, no. Expectations, yes, to be appropriate. Yes, this is the expectation we have.
Right. But other than to be appropriate, I don't expect you to, for instance, be happy every day or to come on
No,
Zoom,
no, no,
It,
not at all. No,
you
not
see
at
what I
all.
mean? It's like you,
Even I,
yeah,
if I go, my network drop mostly. I don't know why it happens when we are
yeah,
doing live. It happens quite regularly. And
yeah,
still never asked me, never ever asked me that, okay, oh, why don't you do this and all that. No, whenever I get like irritated with this, that okay, yes, my network he says, okay, just upgrade it and all that. But
yeah,
like, okay, yes, you should be there. There is no should here. I am doing because I enjoy this. I like this. I got
exactly.
this. Not only I enjoy this, but also I have this tremendous opportunity to exercise, to actually
Yeah,
re-evaluate everything, whatever I am
yeah,
choosing to acquire in my life, and practice my skills, and of course sharpen them and all those things. So for me, it's a tremendous, amazing opportunity also.
mm,
It is all, of course, it is coming organically from my side, but from Syl's side, no, never, ever.
yeah,
Expectations, yes, as Syl says that when we are sharing something, like we are sharing this
yeah,
live now, we have this expectation of being appropriate. I cannot
yes,
just say that, okay, when Syl is asking me, said, okay, Beena, would you like to share something? I cannot be like, okay, I'm going to sing my
yeah.
song here. I can, of course, I can.
Absolutely,
It's
you
not a
can.
problem. Of course,
It,
I
yeah,
can. And there
yeah,
is no obligation for me to not do this. But
yeah,
my sense of appropriateness will not allow me to do this,
exactly,
because it is something that, of course, right
exactly.
now, it is not needed. I can exercise, I can practice, but it is not appropriate right now. This is
Right,
how
right.
things, like, okay, when Sil is talking about the conundrum of freedom, and I start talking about something, the weather or something, if it is not connected, even though he always appreciate that, but still it has to be connected. Otherwise, we
Wow,
are just wasting our time and other people's time also, and energy,
wow.
which is of course completely against the whole philosophy of way of impeccability.
Mm, mm,
Expectations can be, of course, the it can only be about appropriateness. One
exactly.
of my friend asked me once, because it's a big huge deal. Sorry, Sil, it's getting a bit longer, but I want
Oh,
to
it's
share.
fantastic. Keep going. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. Keep going.
One of
Keep
my
going.
friend asked me that, okay, oh, I that they were keen to and interested in to get into relationships again. And it's been very long, they were
Mhm.
not. And they asked me that, okay, what I'm not very clear what I really want in my life. And when we started discussing things, the things come up in, of course, in a bit cliche things like, okay, what you're looking for in that person you want to be in relationship with. Surprisingly, for me, it was surprise. It was a surprise that things come up with like, okay, oh, yes, I don't have much expectation, like tall, dark, handsome kind of, but I do have some sort of idea that, okay, this eye color, or maybe this race, or something like this. And for me, it was very typical and limited. And then and of course, because we are good friends, and then when they share more, and I said, for me, there are few other things which I want to uh, just write down whenever I get serious about it in my list of ideas, that okay, this is what I want in my life, and it has nothing to do with other things. Like the appearance. I'm not saying that you can be completely blind towards that. Visuals are so important because we see each other. Our eyes are in front of ourselves, that okay, we see first and then we perceive. And of course, if you are not feeling comfortable with, you will not continue. And of course, the appearance shares a lot, but these are not the criteria to understand someone and their liking and dislikes, and of course the
Mm.
priorities in life. This is the most important thing. And when I shared that, okay, for me, first I want to see that where their priorities are in life. And then this is okay. Oh yes, it makes sense, because the most horrible imagination I can have in my life, to have to be with someone who is just the whole priority for them is to work for a whole week, and then on a weekend just go out, uh, eat tons of food, watch a movie, or just collapse on a couch. Like, this is what this whole thing, or crack some stupid jokes. This is a nightmare for me. But of course, when I say that, they realize that okay, their priorities are also different now. So whenever we are doing something, we need to check first the priorities, where our priorities are. My priorities are different.
Mm.
And when we get into this idea of appropriateness, everything change. Even your idea of your relationship, ideas of your business, ideas of your lifestyle, everything changes. Everything change. It all gets into first appropriateness. That thing might be very good, wonderful in general, not appropriate for me.
Now, it's the
This
magic
is
of
this is
appropriateness, right, Beena?
exactly,
As a philosophy,
exactly.
as a way of living.
I just decide to, while I was sharing that story, I realized that it would not be very though it is very interesting, but I'm choosing to not share and not go into details.
Wonderful, wonderful,
So that's why I
wonderful.
had to change a bit.
Wow. But now, just think though, if we look at the implications and consequences of appropriateness, yes, in
Yes,
terms of our interactions, yeah, and we say,
yes.
that's the only expectation we have is of appropriateness. However, Bina, now
Yes.
we are looking at new nobelia, a new nobility, Nobelia-Living, because because I can apply that expectation of appropriateness with you. Why? Because I trust your intent to goodness.
Hmm.
Yes, I have
Hmm.
implicit trust in your intent to goodness. Does that mean you are always going to be appropriate? No. Does it mean
Hmm.
that your intents are going to be good? Yes. The application of your good
Yes.
intent might come out in the short term, in the intermediate, in the
Yes.
subcontext as perceived as inappropriate, but in the bigger context, it will be appropriate because you weren't intending to be odd and peculiar and weird and whatever, right? So this is share with the universe, says
Yes.
Norma, especially when making a decision. It's crucial, exactly, Norma. And if we have complete freedom, we don't have this ability because well, you're on your own, really. Freedom, does that mean? Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe not. It depends how you define freedom. So it's a tricky subject. But I wanted to just make this point that it's about the clarity of intent. Now you can get into it and define what freedom means and say, no, but my freedom does mean also with attunement, etc., etc. But if you leave it vague, it can be technically like if you were to say to the supercomputer in a virtual reality game, you say, okay, I want to go into this virtual reality. We have total freedom, and the computer creates the environment for you, and it takes us very literally into the detail. Well, there you go. You're all on your own. You're completely free.
Yes.
See,
Yes.
it's a big deal. It's a big deal. So we have to be
Yes.
careful. We have to be careful. Now, of course,
Absolutely.
you can say to the computer, that's what I meant with freedom. Oh, well, that's what you said, not what you meant, right? Two different things. It's important. It's important to us. So it's about clarity of intent. But I want to get back to my point I was making, Beena, that in our interaction and our relationship, yes, we
Yes.
can have this expectation of appropriateness
Yes.
because we trust the intent. Will I have this with somebody who's like a known criminal? No, not necessarily. Or somebody who's lied to me repeatedly, or who's deceptive. Yeah? No, sorry.
Yes.
I'm not going to have an expectation of appropriateness from them. I'll have an expectation
Yes.
of appropriateness from me, which means my behavior to be appropriate with them is not to believe everything they say, and not to make contracts which are dependent on them keeping their word.
Yes.
Stuff like that, right? Or
Yes.
agreements
Yes.
or arrangements. So in other words, my appropriateness would involve being strategic, sensible, cautious, etc. Yes. But in our relationship, because I have total absolute trust in your intent to goodness, I know no matter what you do, how it may seem weird or odd or unusual, I'm not going to say, get all mad. Beena, like, come on, man, why are you doing this? I'm like, this really. No, I'd rather say, Beena, I don't get it. I don't understand. I'm confused. And then you explain, oh, I see. I didn't see. Oh, it was a big context. All right. Okay. I get it now. I get it now. Right. And this is a very big shift. And this is part of Nobelia-Living. Yes, it is
Yes.
key to that society is that they insist. It's not even an insistence. It's just like, well, duh, of course. If you hear on Nobelia, your intents are good. Now, this is taken
Yes.
for granted. Yeah. And so they have that maximum capital R receptivity. Also,
Absolutely.
also on the flip side, Ursula's choice to become an aspirant and and by implication Camilius's not to become an aspirant are deeply implicitly connected to freedom. On Ursula's old world, now note well, I say old world, not home world, because Ursula will tell you, nope, it's not my home world. Nobelia is now my home world. Right? She made that complete shift. She uses the language to say it's my old world, not my home world. To say home world means she's still got some connection there, and that's where she is. No, Nobelia is now her home world, right? Complete, total shift. Now, on Ursula's old world, she had essentially the run of the show, and as much freedom as one could have in a world like that, right? She had the maximum there. But now,
Yes.
coming in as an aspirant, does he not give up a tremendous amount of freedom? Freedom, in inverted commas. In one sense,
Yes.
yes, some people will say, but she's crazy. It's like, man, she had it all, and now what? She's going to go be an aspirant, a student, a learning, people telling her potentially what to do, blah, blah. Of course, that's not what it means to be an aspirant. But in that thinking, see, my point, though, is that to a large extent, she is giving up freedom because she's in an environment in which her behavior is being determined by the environment. Yeah, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
she's very clearly stated this. And she's made this choice to be a complete noob and therefore to have
Yes.
the environment determine her behavior and the situation, the circumstances. Camillus, on his old
Sorry to
world,
interrupt you.
no problem. Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm going to eat, but I'm listening. Yes.
Okay. Camillus also on his world has a great deal of freedom. You know, he's like a big cheese on his world. He's one of the top academics there. He's respected and honored, and people listen to him, etc., etc. He has a lot of freedom. They can say what he likes pretty much, and all this. He would have to, and he's not willing to give that up. Yeah, he's not. He's not willing to do that. To him, he perceives it as a loss of freedom. Ursula, however, sees her choice as a gain, as an increase in freedom, not a diminishing. She doesn't see it as a loss of freedom, not at all. Yeah, technically it is, but she doesn't see it that way. She sees now she's free to pursue her heart's desire. Right? She's free to pursue moreness, which is what she always pursued, even though she didn't have the term for it. This was always what she was doing. She just didn't know there was more. Now she's come into contact with more, and it's like, oh, okay, wow, awesome, fantastic, brilliant. Right? So she's now free to pursue her true deepest desire. Right? It's a very powerful point on freedom here. Very, very, very powerful point. Very, very powerful point. Beena, I know you're listening and you're not here. I'm very much debating what to do now. I think that this, because we did last week on this, the first part of this chapter, and there was so little left. I didn't realize that, right? And we pretty much covered it the other day already. I'm going to continue with the poem where we were on that, because there's so much more in the poem and going through this. And the last part of the poem is absolutely about this pursuit of our highest ideal, our highest aspiration. It is about the ultimate of where we are ending up. Yes. And now it comes this point of freedom, and the conundrum of freedom is a big point that's coming up. I'm going to share the poem, and then we'll continue on the poem. Just a marvelous, marvelous, marvelous point. I don't remember exactly where we were, but we'll figure that out in a moment. Anybody have any questions? Norma says, Beena sending energy of love for dessert. Oh, Beena and Norma, that's too wonderful. Thank you, Norma. Thank you, Norma. I'm saying thank you on behalf of Beena. Beena really appreciates your sharings of appreciation and love, and I know she'll send love back. Yeah, big deal, big deal. Any comments, Sarah, on this point of freedom? It's a complex point. It's a deep point. It's one, like Beena says, it requires processing and thinking it through to the end, and multiple perspective shifting and rumination and pondering and consideration and reflection. All of those are required. Yeah, yeah. Right. Let me screen share and then go through the poem and see where we were at. Share screen. I got things behind me here. Let me just drag this bigger. There we go. We don't have confusing things. Don't have confusing things. Put myself up there by the camera. There we go. See, now when I screen share, it puts my little video of me and Beena. It puts it tiny up at the top there, but I put it under the camera so that when I look at it, then I'm looking at the camera. I think we sometimes put ourselves behind bars. Not sometimes, Norma, mostly. Yeah. It's unfortunately a default. All right. We were here with the Mariners starting to share. All right. And she's talking about that plane between the portal. All right. And there's this plane, and then on the other side, one assumes there's another portal, and it's this threshold, this plane, where you feel heavy because of the baggage on you. Right. She's explaining about this. And yeah, I'll just start from where this is the assistant in the poem, right? Is the three. There's the aspirant, the aspirant's me of when, the aspirant's me of now, the aspirant's me of when, and then all together, those three are the aspirant's me of more. That's the title of the poem. Yes. Listen, before we go into this, let's listen to Sarah. Sarah says, no, I get it living. No, I get it living it. I'm assuming there's a punctuation there, right? You're living it, this freedom. Just broke up with a boyfriend, moved back home into a tiny apartment, and now I've bought a camper. Take it as a win. Wonderful. That is a great win. I'm doing great and beginning my journey of freedom. Yes. When we unhook from dependency, this is a massive, giant, great big leap into freedom. Yes. Just because we unhook from dependency doesn't mean we can't have interactions, right? Like my friendship with Beena or with Norma, there's no dependency, right? And that makes those relationships free. Yeah. This is the bane of most relationships. There's that dependency. And when there's dependency, there's no freedom. And then those relationships never last. They always break down. Right? That's why expectations and obligations, when you have those, they foster dependency. And dependency is death to relationships. That is fantastic to hear, Sarah. That's fantastic to hear. Good for you. Good for you. I hope this doesn't mean that you not continuing your studies with a yoga teacher training, unless you finished with that, because I thought you said you were close to the end. Yeah. So this is brilliant. I hope so. I hope so. All right. So just to, as I was explaining there, to go back into the poem, we hear where this assistant who comes along, and the assistant is also in the poem, because the poem is in this realm, like a very figurative, metaphoric realm, kind of like a dream realm, but it's more real than a dream. Very real, but still kind of has dreamlike qualities. And in this, the assistant is part of the aspirant, right? She says it someplace. She says, "Oh, it's like, you part of me." And yes, the assistant is metaphorically a part of the aspirant, and now the assistant is kind of, it's like a bigger self, like you could say, a higher self explaining what's going on. Nailed it. Thank you. Yoga is almost done. Brilliant. I injured my knee, so I had to take a time out. Oh dear, Sarah, you got to be careful. You got to be careful. You got to be careful. But good. I'm glad it's nearly done, and also that because of the injury, you are able to take a time out. Yeah, yeah. So brilliant on the camper. This is fantastic. And breaking up with a boyfriend. When things aren't right, we can't stay in them simply because, well, you don't want the awkwardness of being alone and, all the stuff. Nah, you got to do what's right. You got to do what's right. Yeah. Can't stay in bad relationships. You're okay. Good, good, Sarah. Good. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. All right. So let's get on to this point of the assistant explaining what's going on with this plane, this desolate plane that's on the other side of this portal, right? And that this by implication needs to be crossed, but that the aspirant was struggling to cross. Right? She's explained what it's all about. So the assistant says, this year we have a leveled challenge. As you've learned the usual lessons and pressed on past the precious plane, a life of good and right and virtue in the main. But now you seek what lies beyond. You wish to venture far into that realm across, where you might find your heart's desire, free and clean of all life's dross, and on into that realm of moreness, where you just might set your soul afire. Aha. Right? Now, the mariner is saying in a very poetic way, of course, that crossing this plane, what's on the other side in the realm across, is where you might find your heart's desire and set your soul afire. Yes, your deeper intents, your most highest aspiration. Now, now she explained what so this is all about, and we are going to get into some real sophisticated, nuanced points here. Yes, so we'll just go through it slowly. That plane acts on the soul unpure. The more that's carried, even if believed so sure, serves to catch both wind and weight. As any you like to call your baggage, bears not carried, to reach your sought-for fate. Your burden now to shed are all ideas, beliefs, and ideals wed, ambitions, goals, even aspirations bold, now must fall to forego their clinging hold. Right? I'm just going to stop there and we'll go on a little bit further, right? So she's saying the aspirant says, sorry, the assistant saying to the aspirant, the soul acts on the plane, acts on a soul unpure. What does this mean? The more that's carried, as in things that we are still holding on to, the typical baggage, right? Even if we were sure about it, anything, even if it's not the usual little b baggage, it might be simply our aspirations or things like ambitions. We're very sure that these are necessary things. Those, they serve to catch wind and weight. In other words, they weigh you down. In other words, to go through that plane, you have to let go everything, right? It says, bears not carried to reach your sought for fate. Very poetic way of saying, if you want to cross this, you have to let go everything. Your burden, in other words, saying it's not an easy job to do. Your task is to shed all your ideas, all your beliefs, and all ideals that you married to, all your ambitions, your goals, even aspirations bold, now must fall to forego their clinging hold. You know this in your deep, as you've already uttered understandings, which you know to keep. One such is your I as law. Now, this came a little earlier in the poem. Yeah, this concept of your I, the self, this idea that you have as law. Law being like myth, but especially in gaming, right? What's the law of the story? What's behind it all? Law is the backstory, as it were, the greater contextual story that supports something. Yeah, the law, and usually it has some kind of romantic way of writing it, but not necessarily, but usually like beautiful, wonderful, mysterious, but it can be other stuff too, but typically law is relatively present, but it's basically essentially backstory, right? Or mourner's story, not necessarily backstory as in facts and details, but laws, your motivation and your psychology and all your connections and interactions and all that stuff, right? The law, the thing that makes you what you are. But to take our I and understand our I is law. Therefore, our I is the concept said earlier in the poem, to establish this idea that I is something that's kind of not fixed. It's a choice, and you can let go of it, right? Because law, it doesn't have to be in the game. You don't have to have law to support whatever the thing is that you're doing, right? It doesn't have to be backstory to support the character. To see that our I is something thus like a story, law, like story, because law has that implication. It's mythological, it's not necessarily true. Yes, just a backstory. It could be, could not be. When we see this as our I and we can let go of this, this is a powerful, powerful, powerful understanding. We are very much wed and married and carried to this idea of ourselves. Whatever our self idea is, it weighs us down because our idea of self, by implication, says I should, I have to, I must act according to how I am. If I'm a certain way, I act in a certain way. See, my law thus determines my behavior. And it's limiting, and therefore it's a baggage, right? It's a weighing you down. It's restricting your freedom of being. Yeah. So now we're getting into freedom here again. What freedom means? Yes, freedom to be me. Oh, you never thought that that concept of me is inherently self-contradictory because it limits you. Oh, see the conundrums of freedom. Yeah, we're getting really deep into nuance here. So we have to be very careful with how we conceive of ourselves. Right? If your conception is one that's narrowed and restrictive, we want to have this complete freedom of self-conception, which says, I don't have a self-conception really, because I can be anything. I can be appropriate, in other words, right? So the only appropriate self-conception is me of an appropriateness being. End of story. Right? Whatever's appropriate, I will be. If that means I must carry nothing, go into it in silence, pureness, so be it. That's appropriate, right? Uh, you know this in your deep, as you've already uttered understandings which you know to keep. One such is your I as law, that I which now you know is not your core. It's but a figment of passions passing quick, as time is measured by soul's measured click. Right? In other words, in the concept of time, capital T time, and your soul, your lifetime here is a blip. It's just a click, one click of the tick of the time, right? For your soul, it's one blip in eternity. Therefore, this idea of my I, when looked at from the soul's point of view, how many zillions of eyes haven't you already been and are you going to be? It's a temporary thing. It's not really you. If you cling to this I, it's going to limit you. Yes, you got to let it go, right? Yeah, it's not your core. Your I as law, is not your core. Very crucial point the assistant is making here, or at least the aspirant is making to themselves, right, from their deeper self. Yes, exactly, Sarah. Yes. Very deep point, very deep point. Of course, we're also doing this reading to enjoy the joys of capital R reading. Yeah, because they are a joy. When especially poetry also, to understand why capital R reading has value, and in poetry specifically, because it's saying something in a beautiful way, in a creative way, in a nuanced way, in a layered way, in a connected way, which regular expression doesn't always carry. It's about the implications and the connections. Yeah, like by soul's measured click. It's just a wonderful way of saying in a very brief way what I said about, this time doesn't have a limit, it's long, it's infinite, blah, blah. Right? Around and round I dance this sharing tale, to coax from you to drop that subtle veil, to here and now make your leap so grand, a trusting leap to waiting mother's promised hand. All right, now this one needs a little bit of explanation there, because it has a literary reference. It's not really necessary, but it is. And the assistant is saying, they're saying the same thing a little bit, because they said it before and they're saying it again. But it's to really encourage the aspirant to drop this subtle veil, the veil of self. Yes, the veil of identity. That, as we usually see it, the I as law, in other words, right? To drop this even in those aspirations and bold ideas and beliefs. All of it must go, not just the limiting facets of our self-identity that, oh, I'm a stubborn person, I'm a this. No, everything must go. Everything must go, right? To here and now make your leap so grand, a trusting leap to waiting mother's hand. Now, you can just say, mother is capitalized here. Mother could mean like the universe, right? A maternal figure, nature's mother typically, right? And so it doesn't really matter if you don't get the literary reference. But this leap is a story in the Faust story from Goethe. Faust, the soul is sold to the devil, right? It's a long story and there's a lot involved in there. And part of this is the realm of the mothers, this concept that I'm not sure if it was created by Goethe or he took it from somewhere else, but nonetheless, it's a mythological conceptuality of, in this realm of the mothers, if you go there, your every wish comes true. Yeah. And Faust makes this leap into this realm of the mothers. And his desire is for this beautiful woman, and he wants this to be true. But of course, because he's trying to make somebody else force them to love him, it doesn't work. You can't limit somebody else's freedom to get yours. So his whole quest to get what he wants in the realm of the mothers is a complete failure. And basically he gets kicked out of there, and there's this drawing and picture of him in this chasm and kind of falling, right? Because he fails in this understanding, which is a deep kind of a reference here to essentially say, if you were aware of that, it's one of these things that poets do sometimes. They put in these references, which if you know it, it adds. If you don't, it doesn't matter. But in other words, the assistant is sort of saying, be careful what you wish for, like, and careful what you ask for and intend. Like Faust, if you're going to intend nonsense, you're just going to get kicked out, and your leap is going to be a leap into a chasm. There's nothing to catch you. You won't be leaping into the mother's promised hand. You'll just fall into the canyon like like Faust did. Right. So very important to be aware, but still just a little extra moreness. It doesn't matter because, like I said, because mother is capitalized here, it can just mean the universes, right? The moreness. This can be another word for moreness. The aspirant sighed a sigh to shift the ocean's tide. What a sigh that would be, yes. A very poetic sigh of saying, really sighed from her depths, right? The aspirant sighed a sigh to shift the ocean's tide. I know, I know, I know from what's averse to hide. A grueling task I shall attempt. Now, this is very subtle here. I know from what's averse to hide. In other words, to the aspirant, the awful truth, she's averse to hiding the awful truth. It's kind of the opposite to what most do. They're averse to the awful truth itself, but this aspirant is averse to hiding the awful truth, right? So she knows from what she's averse to hide that this is a grueling task I shall attempt. With all deep vigor from me to summon, a fate from which I choose not be exempt. Towards the beckoning portal I did stride, a stride determination to be my least. I just love poetry. I just love poetry, right? Well, first of all, we got all that alliteration in there, right? A grueling task I shall attempt with all deep vigor from me to summon. She's saying, I have to pull from my depths. I have to get energized from this, right? Deep vigor. I have to really get energized and have vigor, not just energy, which vigor is like extra energy, right? To be vigorous, right? And moreness. Yeah. And she says, a fate from which I choose not to be exempt. I'm not going to say, no, this fate doesn't apply to me. It does not apply. She's saying this, right? She's saying, no, I'm going to choose this fate. Norma, I can't see your message just now. Yeah, so I know, say it in comments maybe. Otherwise, I have to open your message and then we can all read it on the live, you see? So I can't check your message right now. Unless you're not here anymore. Did you maybe drop off? All right. I'll see it later, Norma. I'll see it later. Towards the beckoning portal I did stride, a stride determination to be my least. I love this line. I absolutely love this line. Right? She says, I strode. Now, striding already implies determination. If you're walking or, okay, you're strolling, you're ambling, yeah, those don't necessarily have much determination, especially if you're ambling. That implies a lack of determination. You're kind of just going or wandering or meandering, right? Those imply a bit of a lack of determination to various degrees. But the stride, if you're striding somewhere, that's by implication got determination. But she's striding. A stride, right? This is a poem that has lots of epistrophe, which is repetition that enhances, right? Towards the beckoning portal, I did stride. A stride determination, right? So it's stride, but it's creatively repeated. A stride determination, like determination is capital D. Determination is this great beast that she's riding now, right? In a sense, right? But striding and a stride determination. She's really saying that, oh my goodness, I'm like really going to put everything I have into this, not just vigor, but determination. But determination to be what? To do what? Determination to be my least. Oh, holy moly, holy moly. Is that correct? Am I reading this? Yes, because she has to let go of her I as law. Yes, which she has to let go of everything that she believes makes her more. She has to set it all aside. So she has to be her least, which is to be nothing essentially. Yeah. A first of efforts bent to improvement's beast. Again, a subtle, sophisticated line. See, this is the first time I'm making these efforts that are geared to connecting to improvement, because in the life of an aspiration, and sorry, an aspirant, you could say improvement is this beast that they ride, right? It drives them, it pushes them, it pulls them, right? So improvement is their all and everything. But this is the first time in her quest for improvement, because crossing this desolate plain is the pursuit of improvement. But this time, she has to make every effort to be less, not more, in order to satisfy improvement's beast. Yeah, yeah, in the sense that improvement has kind of a pressure, right? Yeah, shedding thoughts and hopes and all desires binding. Now we're getting Buddhist here. Yes, the Four Noble Truths of Buddha says, yes, all about desire. Right? And desire is what binds us. Desire is what limits us. Now, unfortunately, and I get a lot of criticism. I have once upon a time. I shared this with somebody, and they nearly had a fit when I said, you know, that if Buddha had added inappropriate desire to the Four Noble Truths, it would have saved a lot of trouble. Because most struggle with say, yeah, but I'm supposed to be a Buddha. Isn't that not a desire to be a Buddha? That's the whole point of Buddhism. Yes, to become enlightened, to be free, be a Buddha. Well, if I'm supposed to let go of all desires, how do I do this? So people get a bit stuck with this contradiction. But if Buddha had simply said inappropriate desire, well, that explains it. Okay, duh. Yeah. Right. And so somebody said, but how can you change what the Buddha said? Why not? Just because Buddha said it doesn't mean it can't be adapted and altered. Yeah, but who are you? It doesn't matter who I am to do so. I don't have to be anybody to do so. The logic of it is self-explanatory. It doesn't matter who I am. Anyway, hello back, Beena. Hello back, Beena. Hello back. All right. So
Yes.
this is a big point, right? This now she's saying, right, a stride determination to be released, the first of shedding thoughts and hopes and all desires binding. And that desires binding, and it's an apostrophe, that right? It is the binding of our desire. Yeah, and this is a big point. Like I said, it's a big Buddhist point. And it's a powerful point that Buddha has. Our desires are excessively binding, limiting. They define our world. They do everything. That's why the Four Noble Truths, each of them are mentioning a different aspect about desire, right? And then you have the Noble Eightfold Path, which is application, doing. It's not quite said in that way. Unfortunately, it's a little vague and nebulous, but nonetheless, right? It was written a long time ago, right? I ventured, right, a first of efforts bent to improvement's beast, shedding thoughts and hopes and all desires binding. I ventured into that wasteland's purge of real self-finding. What I just love the sophistication of the sensei. That wasteland, right between the portal, this desolate plain, it's purging self in order to find real self. It's purging little s self, which is desires, hopes, ambitions, aspirations, etc. Right? It's purging all of that to find real self. Yeah, how cool is that? My task and challenge known. Yeah, even assistance reminding share. Yeah, this is very powerful. So the aspirant kind of already knew it, but assistant came and reminding it. What does share rhyme with? Oh, on the next line. Yeah. I was going to say, I don't see the share up, the rhyme up there. This is somewhat unusual in poetry to have a line end the stanza, and then it rhymes in the next stanza, right? To have cross stanza rhyming. This sounds like nature. It is to a certain extent. Thank you, Sarah. I love this poem. I absolutely just love this poem. It sits with me very deeply. There's so much in it. Right. I ventured into that wasteland's purge of real self-finding, my task and challenge known, yea, even assistance reminding share. On I plunged, unbinding self from wishes glare. Same point again, right? Just this desire, right? From wishes glare. Our wishes have a glare in our awareness that can blind us. How poetic to say this, right? unbinding self, little s self, from wishes, apostrophe, glare. Further now, easier than earliest precocious way. Now, if you don't know the poem, the aspirant tried earlier, and they only took a few steps, and they said, man, wow, each step was heavier than the last one. If I extrapolate, I'm not going very far. So they said, they're not one to flog the self with futile quest. That was the way she said it. So she turned back, realizing this is just a futile quest here. I'm not going anywhere. So they came out and get reorganized, rethink things. Now they're trying again, right? On I plunged, unbinding self from wishes' glare. Further now, easier than earlier's precocious way. Yet alas, precocious too, right? We understand what precocious is, like a precocious child. They learn quickly, they move fast, they learn more rapidly, they know more things. But precocity has some massive problems to it. Most precocious children hit a plateau and then they kind of crash. Because what is fantastic for a child doesn't necessarily mean it's fantastic as an adult. Yes. I mean, if you can play a concerto as a child, wow, that's brilliant. As an adult, oh, you can play the concerto, but can you play it well? Yeah, no. See? So there's a problem. So we have to be careful of precocity. To be very careful of precocity. It's kind of rushing ahead too soon sometimes, and you get a false sense of confidence, a false sense of competence also. Right? And that's kind of what happened. Well, it didn't really happen, but it's a nice poetic way of saying it was a little too soon, right? The aspirant is a little bit precocious as a learner, right? So she's legitimate in trying it. Right? Just a little caution there. Yet alas, I'll not grind your receptive ear. Each step yet weightier and gloomier than the failing day, foretelling doom of efforts dear. And there on that plain of soul's reveal, I did fail to shed deep emotion's binding seal. But imagined blackness dark and cold, as yet delayed its promised hold. And though, as in a dream too clear, I am returned to what I still hold dear. I'll read on in a moment. It's just a fun couple of things in here. Right? So now you expect a poem like this is a grand story. We are so typically expecting stories to have success in them. No, the aspirant tries, fails, and tries again and fails again. Now, all right, maybe we're not at the end of the poem. You might say, well, maybe it's coming later, but I'll just give you a clue now. No, the aspirant does not succeed in this poem, doesn't make the story valuable. Yes. We'll see now the value that comes from this, that comes here. And it's very cool. It's very cool. Right? I did fail to shed deep emotions binding seal. Now, it's emotions without the apostrophe, so emotions plural. She has many deep emotions and they bind her. Yeah. But imagine blackness dark and cold, as yet delayed its promised hold. In other words, she didn't die, yeah, which she thought she might if she fails in this attempt. So she doesn't die, right? And though, as in a dream too clear, with 2O, you're having a dream that's desire is to clear you, then that would be one application here. But also, as in a dream too clear, like with excessive clarity dream, right? So there's the double meaning of two and two. Yeah, but when you say it, you can take it both way orderly. But to write it two and two, they have different spellings, right? That's why in the poem it's written both ways. Even though when you read the poem, you kind of have to read two and two. You have to kind of to is shorter than too, right? There's a slight nuance, right? If I'm saying I'm going to the supermarket, if I'm going to supermarket, leave out the, now it's a different meaning, right? Anyway, my point is that when you read the poem, you have to read it kind of in between two and two, which is just fun. And though, as in a dream too clear, I am returned to what I still hold dear. And here you find me, Limo, as till I was. For those who don't know the Limo, the poem format is the aspirant explaining this all, sharing this all with Limo. Limo's her ear, just an ear listening to her ear, right? And here you find me, Limo, as still I was, and find me still as now, with one large difference as to the how, which eluded on my trial so sure, a gift I see now of knowing pure. Limo, this I now do know, the path to excuse me, the path to purging what yet binds unfree is one of practiced, repeated, being as tree. We come to a massive, potent philosophical point. Yes? What is the aspirant saying here? Beena, please, if you can. You done eating? Did you enjoy eating?
Yes.
Oh, brilliant. It take this last point that the aspirant is making and just comment, elucidate, share, speculate. Yes, Norma says rules of others don't count. Poetry comes from the personal soul, precisely. Because to me, real poetry connects us to the ineffable. That's my definition of it, which is a very open definition. It's more of a conception than a definition, but nonetheless, right? When you connect into the ineffable, you make that leap into moreness, essentially. Yeah, ineffable by definition, that which we cannot define, cannot grasp. Yeah, it's power, it's moreness. All right, on this point, yeah, I'll read it again,
Yes.
Beena.
This
You,
this is something that
go ahead.
what you mentioned. Sorry,
Go.
Norma, what's saying about the poetry, and I personally feel that this is same to any form of art. When we look at
Yeah,
paintings, when
yeah,
we listen to music, when we see any type of art, it could be dancing, it could be any performing art or visual art,
yeah.
and of course, reading poetry or any story, any fiction
Wha-
also. Everything it is from our perspective. When I see things from my perspective, well, that's why the story reading is so powerful, because
Yeah,
everybody has their own idea of the characters in the story. They have their own persona they create. They have their
yes,
own things.
yes,
Even the
yes,
story that we are reading, but it's same. But we can
yes,
see this the point of view of the power of perspective in the story reading.
exactly,
If we
exactly.
all read the same story written by someone, but okay, we are reading that, we all will have completely different understanding of the characters. We will create
Exactly.
images in our mind that, oh, this person might be like this. And the author would say that, on earth you guys start imagining this person would be like this, because in my mind it was
Yes,
completely different.
yes,
And
yes.
this is same for the poetry. When I look at the painting, for me, it's whenever I can, I do connect with that. It, of course, I don't have any um, profound or trained or professional knowledge about the art. I don't have that. I'm not really educated in
Well,
art,
well, well,
especially in visual
well,
arts.
yeah.
But I understand this from the point of view of my feelings. What texture grabs me? What type of feeling it actually stirs up in my mind, in my
Mm,
being? This is
mm,
how I relate to or connect with art. And same with the poetry. Sometimes the whole poetry can be so profound. With just one line, just
yeah.
one line can grab you. And it's
Yes,
because of
yes, yes,
and then it opens up a door of like so many other things. This is why
exactly.
we say that we don't
Doors of
actually
connectivity. Yes.
yes, yes. And we don't actually connect with the experiences. We do actually connect with the memories of those
Mm,
experiences.
mm,
And
mm.
it's the poetry and art, any type of art actually is connected to those memories, and it stirs up those memories, those specific memories in our mind and heart. And this is how
Yes.
we connect with that. It's not about experience. That's why I'm a big supporter of, say that if that person, he himself or she herself is not in that position, how he or she can actually give you advice. Actually, they can. It's not about experiences. It's about the connectivity. I never experienced this heartbreak like that. but I still enjoy that. I can connect with that. It's not about like
Mm.
to experience everything. Do we experiment every single thing which science has given to us? Like, oh no, we don't do that. We trust. We
No,
trust. And
no,
then that is how, of course, you can trust that yes, someone actually did something with their maximum sensibility, with their maximum earnestness. And that person overall was a good person, or at least from my perspective. So I can trust their perspective. For me, that's why I really love this quote from Syl. What actually makes this
no.
world go around is not love, it's trust.
Exactly. No,
It's trust. And
absolutely.
very
No,
logically, in a very rational, practical way, look at yourself. Do we experiment every single thing we are using in our life by ourselves? No, we don't do that. We just
no.
trust that this technology, what these people are doing, and we are going to
Exactly.
use it and get value out.
Everything we
It's
trust,
trust.
every breath we take is an act of trust.
Yeah, exactly. Every single time when we are going into elevators and lifts, don't we trust?
Everything,
You
everything.
trust.
Yeah,
When we are turning the electricity on, the switch, turning the switch on, we're
exactly.
trusting.
Every
And
interaction with
every
somebody, you're trusting that they are going to not go crazy on you.
exactly. And when we never actually pay attention to that how much our whole
Yeah,
world is dependent on trust.
yeah,
When I am breaking that egg, cracking that egg in my pen, or
yeah,
I'm cutting those
well,
vegetables, I'm
yeah,
trusting that it is going to taste in that specific way.
exactly.
Every egg is new, every vegetable is new. How would I
Yeah.
know? Because of the experiences, because of those
And
trust
therefore,
in that, in nature. That carrot
and
is going to taste like carrot,
yes,
not pineapple or any weird
yes,
food like
yes,
something
yeah.
else, or
And
bitter gourd or
therefore,
something. No,
yeah. So pay
yes,
attention to those of you who abuse trust or break trust. Be aware that when you do break trust, because it's trust that makes the world go round, you are going against the world and against the universe.
exactly,
And that's
exactly.
always costly. It's a grave danger that you take. Yeah. Don't do it.
Yes,
Don't
yes.
do it. Don't do it, in other words. Very important. Yeah. Keep going, Beena. Keep going.
Yes, this is what I was when you were sharing about the poetry and the moreness, and of course the connectivity.
Oh,
That is something I was just feeling that yes, poetry is, as Norma was saying, that it's very personal. It is
yeah.
personal, like everything else in this world.
Yeah.
When I am trusting, when I am sowing any seed, even though I have all the information, the information is coming not from me. The information is coming from somewhere else or someone else by someone else. And I'm
Mm.
trusting that. And then I say, okay, yes, this seed is going to sprout and it will come out as that particular tree or plant or seed, whatever.
No. No.
This is my trust. And this is how this whole foundation, the whole foundation of this whole universe is on trust.
Exactly.
We
Now,
don't actually acknowledge how much we trust and how much we have to trust.
and how much we have to understand trust.
Exactly.
That's a
Exactly.
huge point, ma'am. Look at what. Will you read Norma's last two comments, please? I want to comment on them. Well, the first one,
Okay.
just agree.
Love and poetry are cousins. Yes. Love and poetry
They're
are
kissing
cousins
cousins.
like
Yeah, yeah,
anything else. Yes.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
anything else. Yes. And then she says that trust is one of the hardest things to develop by adults. We were all let down as children. Trust to protect
Yes,
us from
hurting.
hurting.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, yes, Norma. All right, I want to
Before
elaborate.
this
Go
one,
ahead, go ahead.
yeah. No, no,
Go ahead,
please
Bennett. Go.
continue.
Oh, no, I've got a long thing
Okay.
to say, so go ahead.
So, okay. Okay. Trust is one of the hardest things to develop by adults. We were all, this is exactly what I'm saying, Norma, that
Oh,
yes, it is hard, but if you will just go into real statistics of anyone's life, how many incident, okay, some might have like really really horrible experiences throughout their life. Still, if you count those incidents as that, okay, yes, number one, number two, number three, number four, 100, maybe 1,000, maybe 10,000 times their trust has been shattered. But when we start looking at that, how much actually we are trusting, we will always, I'm pretty sure about this, that we will find that we are trusting more than in any, even the worst situation, in the worst life
Yeah.
someone is living, they are still trusting more than not trusting, because their trust has been actually validated more times than it has been shattered. Like when we are walking, they say that, okay, it's a fun thing that, okay, they're saying that, okay, human actually walking, human walk is a miracle, because
Yeah.
it's very unusual, it's weird.
It's
How can
controlled
you
falling.
elevate? Exactly. And how can you just elevate yourself in the air without having anything specifically designed for that? But we do. For a moment, we are in the air when we are walking. But every single mother trust, and of course, every child trust when their parents or anyone just teaching them how to walk, and we encourage them to do this. This is the trust. Every single time when we are going to sleep, we have this trust that we are going to have that, even though there is a possibility. Of course, every single breath is a possibility of not being here anymore, but also there is a possibility of trust. Every single morning is a renewal of the trust from the universe. We might be trusting consciously in ourselves, but universe is actually deliberately showing that it is trust. And even if we just don't go into the more details, every technical stuff we are doing is a consequence of trust. The baseline is always a trust.
Yeah. Right. We get to a big point on trust. Huge point.
Yeah.
Norma. Yeah, I'm going to make a discernment and a distinction between little t trust and capital T trust. And the distinction is a huge difference, and it's very, very important to understand. Yes, our trust, which as children was inappropriately bestowed, was broken because it was given in unawareness, in cluelessness, in ignorance. We trusted that which didn't deserve trusting, which didn't merit trusting, which didn't warrant trusting. Yes, in other words, other people, our parents, other children, whatever, right? They're all unaware. You can't really trust what's unaware. However, we made the mistake, or most make the mistake as children, to stop also trusting the universe. We need to maintain that capital T trust in the universe. Let's think this through. If I trust the universe to be sensible, benign, and especially if I understand that the universe's intent is the intent to awareness. Yes? Now, if I say this, I trust, therefore, that my experiences with little t trust are beneficial. I understand the universe put me in that situation of having my trust broken. Why? Because it was saying, you're not aware enough. You're not clued enough. You're in a bubble. You're behaving inappropriately. You need to learn, right? And you need to learn to be strategic, sensible, discerning, understanding, aware, etc. A lot of things you need to learn, right? So I'm giving you this lesson in your trust being broken so that you can learn to develop sobriety, sensibility, right? Discipline, thoughtfulness, thinking it through to the end, perspective shifting, all of these wonderful things all come from that magical lesson of our trust being broken. It is our path to independence of being. Right there. If you're trusting and you're trusting naively, you're trusting inappropriately, your life is going to be really difficult, especially later on. You're going to be taken advantage of. People are going to scam you, whatever. Yeah. So we need to learn to trust inappropriately, which is sometimes you got to trust suspiciously. There are all sorts of gradients. My point here being that the universe put us in that situation to specifically and deliberately have our trust broken, our inappropriate trust broken. Therefore, if we trust the universe, we see the good and the purpose and the power and the awesome of those lessons that we learned when our little t trust was broken, when our inappropriate trust was shattered, as it should be from the universe's point of view. And here I am using should. I very rarely use should, but this is an appropriate should. This is an incredible thing. Therefore, my point being that yes, we need to learn to trust judiciously. In other words, trust with extreme caution, with extreme deliberation, with extreme discernment in our dealings in the world and people. But when it comes to the universe, our capital T trust applies. And there's no question, none, not one single doubt in our trust of the universe's benign intent. Cannot. This I find, unfortunately, if you look through religious scholars and people, they all failed in this. Oh, ye of little faith. They never took trusting belief in the universe or belief in God. They never trusted God totally. They always had some doubts. Always had some doubts. So we can't have doubts. We have to trust when it comes to the universe or God or Allah or whoever you're doing, right? Brahman, whatever, doesn't matter. You have to trust that entirely, completely. That's capital T trust. If not, you cannot see the magic. You just think, oh, I had an unfortunate experience. It was terrible. And also, no, it wasn't. It was a gift from the universe. That breaking of your trust as a child that most of us experienced, it's a gift from the universe. It made you more aware. It made you more sober. It made you more alert. It made you more attentive. It forced you to be strategic, etc., etc., etc. Yes? Yeah. And that's how it protected you, right, from really being hurt, Norma. As a child, it was only your feelings. But as an adult, if you trust inappropriately, you could get physically. Go ahead, Beena.
Sorry, it was breaking. I don't know.
Oh,
You were sharing. I was just listening. Yes.
oh, interrupt me if it's breaking. That's fine.
No problem. Please continue.
What was I saying before it started breaking?
That inappropriate trust and learning how to actually not do this. Yes.
Wow. And we have to trust the universe.
Yes.
Completely and utterly. Because in this instance of the inappropriate trust being broken, if we trust the universe, we understand it was a good thing. May not have been nice at the time, it was a good thing. Right? Norma says to protect us from hurting. As a child, it was only your feelings that were being hurt. But as an adult, if you trust inappropriately, you can get physically hurt, if not killed. You can lose everything from inappropriate trust. Yeah, like in scams and being stolen from, etc. It's a big deal. In other words, we need to learn to be able to trust appropriately. Yeah, Beena, go ahead.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
It's everything for me. Again, we are going back to the same thing, and of course, as I mentioned
Yeah.
the appropriateness. Coming back to the central column of today's discussion, that appropriateness is also is really the binding glue. We
Yeah.
have that because from starting from the Buddha's teaching, especially the Zen one, I was always very confused with that. Okay, what they are trying to say that, and why to
Yeah.
make things so difficult that it gets really confusing for other people.
Yeah.
And I was almost irritated with all those Zen things. Not all, but yes,
Yeah.
most of them.
Yeah.
Because for me, they were too difficult, complex, and unclear. This is what my idea was. And I do have some friends, they do practice Zen lifestyle and Zen things. And whenever they say something, and there are so many tales also that, okay, yes, the person who come to Guru and the Guru slapped him, and then of course the whole life. And after spending like 50 years, just one lesson, and that lesson could be just that: follow and be appropriate, follow the appropriateness and be appropriate in the situation. And that was not being said by anyone in this whole Zen stories, at least as far as I have read and heard from other people. Sometimes that's why I say that for me, having a precise, appropriate vocabulary is the key. Because when you have something which clicks in your mind, sometimes you feel that, okay, yes, this thing has been said in a very longish way, in multiple ways, which is unnecessary, but it is necessary. Everyone's mind works in a completely different way, and we need to, it's like a hit and test kind of thing, like, okay, test and try, say things. If it clicks, good. If not, then of course some other words, the variation of the same thing. And this whole process of trusting, we need to first understand the idea and the perspective of appropriateness, and then we will see that even the trust or the love, okay, if you, some people, actually what they are trying to say or explain is trust, but they use the word or the term love
No,
instead of
no,
trust. Because when they explain, you will see that, oh, it's trusting, it's not love. Of
exactly,
course, love, everyone has their own
exactly.
understanding of love. I'm not going there, but actually, what trust is, when they are saying that you, even the most profound idea of love needs appropriateness. If
Exactly.
you
And
are
trust too.
inappropriate, exactly, this is what I'm saying, that
Yeah,
because people don't actually consider uh,
yeah,
trust as profound as love, which is,
correct.
oh,
But it
love, we
is.
should love. This is a misunderstanding.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
whatever, I'm just saying that even for you or for anyone, if love is the most divine, most profound concept,
yeah,
even that needs appropriateness.
exactly.
Try to do this and you will see them. And mostly we do experience some undesired consequences when we love
Yes,
inappropriately.
absolutely. Absolutely. As most people will tell you, if you ask for a history of their relationships, they'll tell you, well, I trusted and I loved inappropriately, both. And therefore, both trust and love are mechanisms for getting us to be appropriate. Yes,
Yes.
trust that's why it's such a powerful lesson in life. Same with love. It's teaching you to be appropriate. Unfortunately, we don't see that abstract connectivity there, because it's appropriateness as a philosophical concept, as a way of living, as a way of being, as a monist term, as an application in our day-to-day life, as a grand concept, is missing. So we fail to make that connection. People see all the time, oh, I need to learn about love. I need to learn to trust. What you really need to learn is to develop the awareness to enable you to be appropriate. Right? Without enough awareness or appropriate awareness, right? Enhanced awareness, you don't have enough awareness to know what's appropriate and what's not, because you don't know what your motivations and your goals and your intents are. They're vague and nebulous. You don't know what the context is. You're only seeing the immediate. You don't see the intermediate, the longer term, the infinite context. So you can't determine appropriateness because you don't have enough awareness. See, all works together. All works together. How incredible. But to trust, capital T, trust the universe, Norma. Yes, this is inherent and deep and implicit. Therefore, we have to insist, if we trust the universe fully, that everything is good. We're just not seeing how. Everything is good. We just don't see how. This is the consequence of capital T, trust of the universe or God or Allah or Krishna or Brahman, whoever. Yeah.
Mm.
This is a profound, profound point that is a very, very difficult point to accept. It requires an extreme sophistication of thinking. It's a big deal.
It's a big deal. Now, unfortunately, in religious doctrine, trust is confused with obedience. It's not the same thing at all. Yeah, not the same thing at all. All right, on this point, oh, thank you, Sarah. I absolutely love that you hear, that you sharing, and that
Oh,
you
yes.
participating. You know, you too, of course,
Yes.
Norma. You know that we love you being here. But I just want to emphasize for Sarah, it's a big deal, Sarah. It's a big deal. I also want to mention,
Yes.
Sarah, that, you know, just being here and hearing what we're sharing, really take this as a point of accomplishment. Yes, I'm not being funny here. I mean, why I say this is because we are sharing really very deep, complicated, sophisticated conceptions. So many hear these, and it's like, it's too much effort to think about it, and they don't want to be here. They don't want to even partake in the conversation because they are being forced to think about things. And it is complex, it is sophisticated, and you do need to think about it. And they don't want to. They don't want to make that effort, right? Because, well, for many reasons. But the fact that you are here and you hearing it, this says a lot about you. And you too, of course, Norma, right? It's an openness, a
Yes.
willingness like the aspirant. It's a willingness to plunge into that wasteland, right? That's that, to purge the soul, to purge the self. It's not easy. It's difficult. We may not get across. You know, we come back, we try again, we learn, we understand, and we, when we get to that point, the very profound point that she makes here as to the lesson that she's learned and what she needs to do to prepare for next time. In next week, next Friday, we'll continue with that, right? Because I'm just Fridays, we're doing the poem now. In the, you know, the week was set aside for capital R reading of the story that I share on Sundays, but we just amended as appropriate. Yeah, it's not easy, but it's huge. It's huge to make this effort. Now, of course, you know, Beena and I do this every day, so we have some practices, it's a lot easier. But you see, with this new conception that I brought in about the conundrum of freedom, how Beena was, you know, dealing with it and figuring it out, coming in from one angle. It doesn't just come automatically, right? And that's the
Oh,
point, though.
yes.
We don't want it to just come automatically, because that doesn't necessarily mean that you've enhanced your awareness. That just means you put it into your database as memory. Yeah. But when you process it, you have to think it through. And now, of course, we can learn to make this a joy. It's not onerous. It's a joy. That's what the whole point of these lives are. The joy of discernment, the joy of bringing things into awareness, figuring it out, contemplating it, multiple perspective shifting, taking it to the end. It's a joy, a joy, a joy, a joy. It's the joy of harmony, of living in attunement, true attunement, because this is the point and purpose of life, the universe, and everything. So I'm going to end it there, Beena, unless you have some,
Yes.
just a little
Just wanna
earlier.
add something. Yes, I
Please,
know, but
please. Yeah, as I
just
said, we're not in a hurry to end. Just wanted to
no,
go
but
ahead.
it is something I want to share because when you were mentioning that Sarah being here is so wonderful for us, of course, and Norma being here, it's always it's a bonus thing for us, always.
Yeah.
And then when that you shared a bit about that, how a huge big deal is to be here because they mostly, of course, concepts and perspectives are very complex and sophisticated and really bring a lot of nuance. And when you have to pay attention, and some people actually they don't want to put that much effort into them. Maybe they do have already. Who knows? We just assume that okay, it is something they might not be interested in. But when someone stays like Sarah, it requires a very particular, peculiar kind of fearlessness. Mostly
Yes.
people get
Courage.
scared when they see that there is something coming huge. They actually understand that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because even if not consciously, their subconscious gets alert by that it is going to
Yeah.
require a lot of transformation and an effort. That's why they don't stay.
Yes.
Norma
And
is staying here, when Sarah is staying here, when
yeah.
Ramsey is staying here,
Yeah.
these people
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
only have self-trust, capital D trust in them, but also they have a very particular kind of fearlessness that
Yes.
yes, whatever is coming, if it makes
Yeah.
sense, there is no
yeah.
problem to
Right,
adapt and
right,
change and all.
right,
This
right.
is the
Because,
fearlessness we all
right.
need in our life.
Beena,
This is the adventure mindset, actually.
yes. And that fearlessness is precisely because of what's happening in the story. Coming to
Exactly.
this type of a discussion is very similar to going through that wasteland. Right? In order for her
Yes.
to cross that wasteland, the aspirant has to give up her I as law. Yes, this idea
Yes.
of self. Now, many people come here and they listen and they have an idea. They know how things work. They've got their spirituality. They've got their philosophy. They understand how it works. Yeah, and then they hear stuff. Oh, I never thought of that. Oh my goodness, I never even considered that. Wow, that's so profound, but it never crossed my mind. I never. Now suddenly their I has become something which is very different to what they thought it was, and they don't want to let go of
Self-conception.
this
Yes.
idea of their I as one that sort of knew what was going on. They don't want to acknowledge that, well, I don't actually know as much as I thought I knew. And they refuse to let go of this idea, right? And therefore they cannot cross the plane. In other words, they can't be here and participate. They can't stay. They literally cannot stay because they can't give up their old idea of self. They're not open to learning new and more things. Yeah, it's a sad reality, but that's why we get so few people coming and listening, because it requires a humility of self and a courage to say, I don't know. That's the courage that Beena is talking about. That fearlessness to say, I don't know. And even though I don't know, I'm going to step into the wilderness of knowledge and understanding and learning. That's what we are about here, right? The
Exactly.
wilderness of new ways of being. It's not about information knowledge, not about data. It's about new ways of being, and to acknowledge that, wow, I don't know, and I thought I knew. This requires an excessive fearlessness to abandon and let go of your idea of self. Because when you let go of that old self, the little self, what do you have? Nothing. You got to build a new, right? Takes a lot. Takes a lot. And this is what the story's about, right? And we're going to come to the remedy for it, and that's next week, right?
Yes.
What the aspirant says, that it's one thing to understand, but all right, I understand what I don't want to do, but what do I do? Yeah, and that's the point for next week. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what happens, says
Yes.
Sarah. Fantastic. Norma says, Sarah, just wanted to wish you joy and drive carefully. Hope to see you there regularly. Oh, what a beautiful sentiment. Yes, yes. When driving with a camper, driving carefully is very important because it's different to our usual habits. So yes, you have to drive differently. You have to drive carefully. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Norma. Thank you for the good wishes, Norma. Norma, such a beautiful, pure heart. Always, always so much beauty there. All right, Beena, let me get back to the
Yes.
computer. All right, that
Thank
will
you.
end there. I
Yes.
mean, I'm not
Yes.
ending
Thank
because
you.
of any other reason that I don't want to continue with the poem because it's a jump into a huge new point. I want to leave it on this point of this deep discernment, understanding of and awareness of trust and what is involved. Yes, trust and learning, letting go of the self, the trust that we will be able to continue even though we don't have the little self to hold on to. That
Yes.
fearlessness. To be fearless requires trust, but appropriate trust, because fearlessness with inappropriate trust is just foolishness or foolhardiness. Yes. Oh,
Yes.
wonderful, wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful.
I do practice this capital T trust every single time we come
Yes,
live,
exactly,
because
exactly.
just even a second before we start, I have no idea. We don't discuss. We
No,
don't prepare. I don't do anything at all. It
nope.
is just a trust that, okay, the moment Syl says, okay, we are live, and I said hello, hello, and yes, okay,
Yeah,
being here,
yeah,
then everything just come automatically, organically.
exactly,
It's okay. It's
exactly.
not a blind trust because I have been doing, and of course I am
Yeah,
continuously putting
exactly.
effort to make myself aware, and of course I'm
Yeah,
working on my skills. So it's not a blind trust, but it's a capital T trust that I don't need to prepare because I have
right,
already done
right,
enough. Of course,
right.
there is always more, which I grow, of course, gradually just coming. And of course, I'm getting from every life, I'm getting more and more experience and and skills. But it's enough already.
Exactly.
I have
Exactly.
crossed that enough barrier. So now I can
Exactly.
trust. I don't need to
Exactly.
prepare. I can trust myself. I can go
Exactly.
live in just like, shortest notice ever. Like, okay, right now, Beena, you're live. And I can
Yeah.
start. I can do this thing.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
something that coming like, okay, without having any substance behind it. So when
Yes.
we talk about capital T trust, it's about like do your best, try to think it through to the end. When your conscience is clear, then of course whatever comes, it will come via attunement, and you will
Exactly.
be able to then deal with
Exactly.
this.
In other words, in closing, and it ties to next week, Beena's capital T trust is a trust that has been founded and developed from capital P practice.
Yes.
On that note, we'll
Yes.
leave for next week.
Yes.
Yes, it's going to connect.
Okay.
It's going to connect very precisely to next week. Remember this word,
Yes.
practice,
Okay.
this concept, capital P practice. This is what Beena's trust is based on, capital P practice. All right.
Yes.
See you all next week. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Sarah.
Okay.
Bye-bye, Norma. Love
See
you. Love
everyone.
you.
Bye
Just
for
too
now.
wonderful. Yes. Bye for
Yes.
now.
Thank
Exactly.
you.
Bye
Thank
for now. We'll see you on Sunday. We'll see you on Sunday.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
so
thank you, Norma. Thank you. Yes, I love it too. Oh, a pleasure, Sarah. Truly a deep, deep pleasure. You too, Norma. It's always a pleasure when you're here. It's a deep joy, pleasure of being. All right. All right. Bye-bye. 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 Next time. End meeting for all.